Well, hello there. This is Bc4 Chess Noob, learning and having fun with chess. Today, I've got a really lovely tactic to show you, really aggressive, that came out of the quietest of games. And more than that, this game came at the end of a 9-game losing streak. So I was feeling a little bit down, and when I got the win at the end, I was so happy, I was so elated. I think this game really fit with my chess.com personality profile. If you remember, I was rated as a chess assassin. Let's go take a look. I had the black pieces in this game, opponent with white, and as I said, they played the quietest of openings, the Giuoco Pianissimo, a very quiet game. And it starts with the Italian. So e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, and bishop c4. That's the Italian. Against the Italian, of course, I play two knights defense. Now, one of the downsides to two knights defense is that white, if they really wanted to, they can kind of force you down into a Giuoco Pianissimo line, which I don't really like. And what they do is they initially push d3, super solid, opening up that diagonal. In this position, I usually play h6. It's solid, it's good. It prevents complications because it denies access by white to the g5 square, which can be a little bit annoying to deal with. They develop the other knight, and here I really don't have any move better than bishop to c5. And bishop to c5 transposes to the Giuoco Pianissimo line, the four knights variation. I can play some other tricky moves, like potentially launching an attack with the knight, but it's just not as good. It's just not really very good. Here, they short castle. The best move for black, according to the engine, is also short castling, but against a Giuoco Pianissimo, when I'm forced to play against it, I try to get a bit of imbalance because I don't like these slow positional grinding sort of games. So I know that castling is perfectly good, but I delay castling because by delaying castling, maybe I can keep the king in the center, maybe I can castle long. And if I castle long, then maybe I can launch an attack onto white's king side. It becomes an interesting, spicy game. So let's delay the castle. I play my own d-pawn to d6, opening up my light square diagonal here. Here they decide to play another. So slower moves, flank move a3, potentially, playing b4, which would come with an attack. So here a5. And a5, firstly, it blocks that b4 move because captures, they can't capture back because, the rooks will look at each other. This also opens up an escape square for my dark square bishop. With white having committed to castling short very early, keeping the bishop, my dark square bishop, on this diagonal is potentially quite good because it pins their f-pawn to the king. Potentially they could try to dislodge it, but having that escape square for the bishop all the way on a7 is potentially good, and we'll see that actually at the end. White now decides to launch an attack. Not a bad idea. This may not be their most accurate move, perfectly fine. I've seen this position enough times to know that trading knights is probably best. They probably shouldn't capture this way because it just allows me to develop my queen. That is probably best, but I didn't want to do that. So have a look here. I spent almost a full minute, I think actually a little bit over a minute, and I decide to play something aggressive. I decide to play knight to g4. It's not the most accurate move. It's not a terrible move, but it's definitely not the most accurate move. Taking this way is a bit better because after white plays h3, so maybe I'll win a slight concession by making white move their h-pawn forward. The best move, according to the engine, the most accurate move, is actually just to bring the knight all the way back. It doesn't look like there's anything you can do, right? And effectively, you're trading a couple of points of tempo to, maybe get white to slightly damage the defense of their king. Now, I wouldn't have played my knight forward move, the knight attack, if I was going to bring it back. obviously, if you know the way I play, I wouldn't do that. Here, we've got the fishing pole attack, or the fishing pole trap, which is now h5. It's speculative, it's not accurate, it's technically not so good. Stockfish says, bring it back, bring it back. But here, the idea is white can't, or they shouldn't, capture the knight with their h-pawn. Because after captures, I now end up, because I've delayed castling, with a fully open h-file commanded by my rook. And with that pawn there, with an attack on that knight, if that knight moves, queen potentially to this position, and there's a very, very powerful attack. So this knight is temporarily immortal, as it were. White sees through it, I think, or they may understand that that's a bit of a problem, and they decide to push their knight forward with an attack. Here, that doesn't really work for them either. It is, they definitely got a chance of winning material, but they don't necessarily have a winning attack unless black makes a mistake. So I've just got f6. It's attacking the knight. Best move for their knight is also to bring it back to their development square. However, I think white here had decided to double down on this attack. There's something to this attack. They now jump the knight forward onto the f7 square, and notice because I've already moved the f-pawn, I don't lose the f-pawn. They've got a fork of my queen and my rook. Basically, best move for me is to take. I lose the right to castle. King is in the center, but notice my pyramid of dark square pawns. King is actually reasonably safe in the center. Now, their idea, of course, is now they're going to take this way with an attack on the rook. There's a discovered check. I have to be careful with where I move my king. If I move my king here, potentially, there's a royal fork there. But no, king here, base of the pyramid on the dark squares, very, very strong. They now take the rook. They're probably feeling very pleased with themselves. However, notice that even though it's +3 of material, they won a pawn and also my rook, and they've just lost one of their knights, it's still just about equal. With me moving my bishop out of the way with a bit of development, in fact, their knight is trapped. And here they decide to, again, double down. I think they were thinking, yes, I've won material. I'm going to try to consolidate the material advantage. Captures, they took that fishing pole trap. Captures, still just about equal. And consider what's happened. They're +5 in material. +5. And yet the evaluation is just about equal. And one of the things to understand, and it's a way to think about what this means in the analysis, is that the side with less material must have some sort of compensation that the engine can see for the evaluation to be relatively so equal. And that compensation is almost always going to be a better position or a potential serious threat, serious attack that brings that makes up for that loss of material. And when one side has a better position in practice, it's easier to play as a human. So here, I would argue I've actually got a pretty major advantage over my opponent. I don't have an advantage in material, but I've got an advantage in the position and the likelihood of winning. Now, white, I think, had an idea. They probably saw a tactic where they didn't think they were going to lose that knight back, because they immediately push their b-pawn violently forward. b4, it's a blunder though. In fact, it's a mate in 8 in this position. What they were thinking is that if captures, they open up their a file and their rook now defends their knight. I'm sure that's what they were thinking. However, in this position, I saw the winning idea that I eventually used, and that Stockfish can see. I don't see it quite as elegantly as Stockfish. As I said, this is already a checkmate in 8 moves. And what it involves, what I saw, was that this pawn, remember, the f-pawn is pinned to the king. They've lost their h-pawn. The king, the white king, is very compromised in terms of their defense. And then if I push my g-pawn, whatever they do, potentially, I've got a rook sacrifice, which draws the king onto the h-file. Moving the rook, sacrificing the rook, also gives the queen access to the h-file, also with check, and then with the g-pawn on g3, king forced back to g1, and then queen on g2 would be mate. So that was my idea. However, I thought that I needed to keep this pin for one move. And so I decided actually to bring my bishop to that very lovely a7 square, that nook that I had prepared earlier. Stockfish says I didn't even need to do that. What Stockfish saw was the immediate rook sacrifice, or rook to h1, check, king falls to that position, queen to h8 with check. Now white can delay checkmate by blocking check futilely a few times. Here's one with the bishop, captures, or also with check now, king now falls back, pawn now forward, that is still pinned, and here they can block the check another time, captures. They now have to move the rook to give an escape square for the king. And here bishop now captures with check, king forced to f1, only legal move. Notice they've got one last escape square on e2, knight forward, takes over, controls that escape square, and there's nothing left for white to do. It doesn't matter what they do, they can't avoid mate, and that is mate queen on their back rank. So that was the mate in 8. Let's pull that back. However, as I said, I thought I needed to keep the bishop for an additional move, so bishop back to a7. White didn't see the tactic, advances their b pawn once again. It's fine. And here, mate in 8. This is still mate in 8. Sacrifice the knight. They take the knight. That's fine. Rook to h1. Brilliant move. Check. King forced onto the h-file. Queen onto the h-file. King back onto the g-file. And queen now to h2. Mate. Good game. GG. The big takeaway from this game is to keep an eye out for this fishing pole attack or fishing pole tactic. It's something that is not uncommonly available, both for you to use against your opponent, but also where your opponent might use it against you. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.